Hey, how's it going? It's Andy. Today I wanted to talk about transparency. It's something that it seems like people have enjoyed about my channel, that I kind of show everything that's going on. That's the positives, that's the negatives, that's anything that's going on that could possibly impact my investing journey. And today I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past couple of years, because I talk a lot on this channel about making good decisions and investing behavior, because I think that's how you set the standard for how you invest for the long term. I had some things go on in my life where I made a mistake that I think is going to negatively impact me, and I think it's important to talk about those mistakes so that hopefully you can avoid it in your life. Emergency funds are critical. It's something that I strongly believe that everyone should have. Depending on who you talk to, this could be $1,000, it could be 6 months of funds of expenses, or it could be up to a year, depending on what stage of life you're in. If you're someone that's fresh out of college that can get by with pretty much any job, maybe you don't need the largest emergency fund. But if you're in your 50s and hoping to retire soon, that may mean that you need a much larger emergency fund. I've talked on this channel a lot about my emergency fund being around $4,000, which is a number that'll survive me for around 2 to 3 months. And I have a relatively high confidence level that I can find a job that'll pay the bills within a month or two. So that's why I keep it at that level. And so anytime my checking account gets above the $4,000 mark, I invest whatever is left. And that's how I've been able to build, a $5,500, $6,000 dividend portfolio in a year while I only make like $40K a year, is because I'm very good with saving my money and making sure that I'm investing consistently. So when we talk about this emergency fund, you need to have this in place in case life gets in the way. This could be a family emergency, this could be medical, this could be car problems. You need to have money sitting on the side, because the thing we want to avoid at all costs is having to take out debt, which is compounding interest going the opposite way. We want money to compound over time in our favor, whereas if you are taking out debt, it's going to be compounding against you. So what we want to avoid at all costs is taking out debt or making it so that we can't use the money that we've built up and having to sell stocks that we actually have. So now let's talk about the story that resulted in me making the biggest investing mistake I've made in a while. It's because going into 2023, I knew that there were some big ticket items and expenses that were going to be popping up. I was going to not work for a week during we have a winter break where around the holidays you don't work for a week. So I knew I was going to have a lower paycheck for one of the weeks in December. I knew that I was going to be moving. My rent was going to go up because the expenses, and I was living in a studio. Now I'm in a 2-bedroom, something I can afford, but it was going to be a bump in my expenses. And I have a large trip with my partner in Australia planned for early March. So we have a lot of these expenses that are popping up at the same time, and I've known about this. These aren't the surprise expenses at the reason that you have your emergency fund, but I was so tempted by looking at the overall market. You see all of these stories about the market's down by so much, and I thought of it as being too good of an opportunity to pass up. So I kept investing in November and December, even though I knew I was going to have these big expenses coming up. So pretty, as you would expect, we get towards the new year and I am pretty strapped for cash. I wanted my checking account to be sitting at around $4,000, was not at that, and it's dropped down to around $1,900. So I've had to pause all of my investing. I did that like a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, but it was too early. I knew these expenses were going to be around $2,500 total, and I did not plan for it. So even though you see the market as a fantastic buying opportunity, you need to be realistic with yourself for what's coming up in the future. If you have these expected expenses, you really need to budget that in. I was looking at my budget. I was getting some raises at work, and I thought I could afford to continue to invest in the market because of the incredible opportunities that we've been seeing in the markets. And now we're getting to the point where my emergency fund is not large enough as it should be. So I've had to pause all investing at this point to try to recoup some of those losses in my emergency fund. And I think that's a really important life lesson to have, is that if you have stuff coming up in your life, you have to change your budget. You have a budget set up, and that is the ideal situation for every month. But we know that every month is different. You have the holidays where you're buying gifts, you're traveling. And in this situation, I know I was having some big life events of moving and going on this large trip, and you need to plan for that. I want to talk about a statistic that really terrifies me, and it isn't me saying that I'm in a better situation than most. It's that 56% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency expense with savings. This isn't me saying that, oh, my biggest mistake is I have double the amount of money that these people have sitting in a savings account. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of people that are in similar situations that are trying to invest into the stock market without making sure that they protect themselves for the long term. Emergency expenses, they pop up. You don't want them to, you don't want to budget for them, but they do pop up, and they are ways that really crush your financial goals because you're trying to go forward, you're taking pretty small steps forward if we're being honest. When you're starting to invest, you're not putting that much money into the market and it feels like it's going really slow. And then you have an expense like this, a medical emergency, your car breaks down and you have to drop $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. It feels like you're taking giant leaps backward. And so we're trying to minimize that. And some people look at the financial journey and they want to get investing as soon as possible. They hear stuff about compounding interest and the importance of time, but you need to be able to protect yourself. And most financial places that you look at, they're going to tell you that the emergency fund is the first thing that you need to prioritize before investing. So I implore you to kind of look at your budget, look at your finances, and don't just focus on investing as much as possible. Make sure that you're protected from surprise expenses that could pop up with an emergency. It also goes with savings is at a recent low. Personal savings rate was 2.3% as of October of 2022, down from 7.3% a year earlier, and it's the lowest since July of 2005, when that rate hit a record low of 2.1%. You look at this, and there's a lot of reasons for why that's going on. Housing has spiked. Inflation has been running rampant for more than a year at this point, and the cost of eggs have quadrupled in the past couple of months. It's something that you need to kind of look at it, and just because the market's down, you need to be able to protect yourself, and you have all these expenses that have resulted in a record low savings rate. So it might be time to kind of look at your budget and make sure that you have protection set in place instead of trying to maximize every dollar to make sure that as much money is going into the stock market as possible. This channel is focused primarily on building wealth for normal people, but you need to be able to protect yourself because, as I mentioned earlier, investing is a slow journey, but having these big expenses that you cannot afford at this point is going to be huge steps backward, and it's going to take you years to recoup those losses, especially if you have to borrow money against it with a credit card loan or just a line of credit. So we're trying to minimize that at all costs, and that's why I wanted to talk about this video, because I talk about how I try to maximize how much money I'm investing in the stock market. But when things pop up in your life, you need to take a step back and kind of think, you know what, it's not worth it putting an extra $500 into the stock market this month if possible. Maybe I need to save that for a rainy day in case something happens, or if I know that I have these major expenses popping up. You need to protect yourself, and I think that people can benefit from maybe not maximizing their investments at all costs, probably looking at their finances as a whole and including their safety net and prioritizing that first, because if you don't have your safety net in place and things go south, it's going to really hurt your finances for the future, and it probably will result in you having to take your money out of the market either at a loss or much earlier than you prefer to have it happen. So I'm keeping my retirement savings going from my job. It's a 100% match on up to 3%, so that's free money, so I'm going to keep that, but I have paused all investments at this point. I'm still getting dividends coming in, and that's kind of the beauty of using my dividend investing portfolios, that they come in and they automatically buy additional shares, even though I can't afford to buy additional shares right now. Hopefully, March is going to be a 3 paycheck month, and that's going to bring my checking and emergency fund back to where it needs to be. But as of right now, I'm kind of stopped investing in the stock market, and let me know if you've had similar situations like this where you've had some expected or unexpected expenses pop up and has resulted in you needed to either stop your automatic investing or really tone it back significantly to make sure that your reserves get back to where they deserve to be. So my name is Andy. The whole point of this channel is talking about investing for normal people, and sometimes you need to take a step back, and it's not all about pedal to the metal and trying to invest as much as possible. You need to protect yourself from some of the mishaps and unexpected expenses that pop up in life, because they will happen and they are pretty brutal if you're not prepared for them. So if you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers at some point, I guess. And there will be additional videos popping up on the screen right now. I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.